Hey y'all, so welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Middle-Aged Housewife. The subject that I want to talk about today is, would I ever consider doing cosmetic surgery? And the short answer to that, the yes or no answer, is at this point in my life, no, I wouldn't. But have I truly contemplated doing it before? Yes. There was a time in my life where I basically wanted to get a nose job in my early 20s when I was in Atlanta living there. I wanted to get my nose done really bad. I didn't like my nose growing up. Obviously, there was a lot of I had a huge complex about it. Basically, I grew up feeling like my nose was ugly because I had a wider nose that was kind of undefined, and that was not the beauty aesthetic that most people went for during the era where I was growing up. Now, full black aesthetics are in style, I guess you could say, and people love it. But for me, when I was growing up, my nose was talked about all the time. I was called Snuffleupagus, KRS-One, Woodstock from the Peanuts. I was called Gonzo. Any character that had a big nose, basically, that's what I was called. Back then, people used to roast or play the dozens, crack on each other, whatever term in your region that talks about how people basically would just talk about each other for laughs and shits and giggles. You'd be that person. That was their go-to for me. They would talk about my nose all the time. So I had a huge complex about my nose. I didn't like it. I didn't feel pretty with it. I felt like it made me look ugly. And so by the time I got to my 20s, even though that had kind of died out and that was more like, high school, middle school, elementary treatment, by the time I got into my 20s, I was still very insecure about it. And I wanted to get my nose done. So when I was living in Atlanta, I was working in property management. I was really considering going ahead and getting the procedure done. I looked up and found one of the best surgeons in Atlanta at that time. So this was like back in the early 2000s or whatever. And, I had priced him, and the procedure was about $8,500. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to hustle up these leases and make this money, save it, and get to a point where I can afford to go ahead and get the procedure done. Because in the beginning, they didn't really have financing. Now you can finance anything. You got the credit. You can finance you a new booty. You can finance you some breasts. You can finance you whatever you want. But back then, they really hadn't gotten to that level yet. It was still kind of not being done. So you had to save your money and have the money to get it done. So I really was considering doing that. I think what changed my mind was I had my daughter, number one. And then, by this time I had met my husband, and I told him, I was like, I'm thinking about getting my nose done. How would you feel about that? Like, what are your thoughts? Obviously, I'm doing it for me because this is what I want to make myself feel better. But you're my partner. We're going to be together. So what do you think about it? And he was like, I really feel like you look beautiful how you are. You don't need to change, your nose. Your nose fits your face. I think you look, nice with it. I feel like you should just keep it. I was like, I figured you would say that, but I'm really still considering doing it. I think I really decided not to go ahead and do it when my daughter kind of came out with my features a little bit. And I thought she was just the most cutest, gorgeous little girl ever with her undefined bridged nose. I mean, hers is a little bit more defined than mine, honestly speaking. Her nose looks a little bit more structured than mine. But she still has a fuller nose. She doesn't have like a small little skinny petite nose that, you know, most people go for or whatever. But she's so beautiful with it. And so when I started looking into her face, and I was like, what's going to happen if I get my nose done? And then my husband would tease me, right? He would be like, all right, you know, you go ahead and get your nose done, and you're going to be, you know, whistling out your nostrils, and, you know, you're going to have one that's like smaller than the other. He's just basically saying, like, things can go wrong, and that's on your face. So if it goes wrong and it doesn't come out the way you want it, now you've permanently altered your face and you don't even like it. So he was just talking to me about that. But anyways, so I was thinking to myself, I was like, what am I gonna do, you know, if I get this procedure right, and then my daughter gets of age and she like wants to change something on her body, and here I am trying to tell her, like, no, you're beautiful as you are, you know, don't get it, don't do this, don't do that. But now I'm being a hypocrite because I went and altered myself. I didn't want to just embrace what I had and, you know, be okay with that either. I wanted to change it. I wanted to correct it. I wanted to make myself feel better through a permanent alteration. So how am I going to preach that same message to her? Because now I'm looking at her, and I see the beauty in her, and I'm like, you're so gorgeous. Like, don't change a thing. Like, everything you have is perfect from A to Z. I love it all. And in her mind, she sees something that is inadequate, that she doesn't like about herself. And I'm trying to tell her that, I'm trying to get her to psychologically believe that what she perceives as, you know, an imperfection is really not that big of a deal at all. It's not an imperfection. It's just a difference. It's just unique. It just doesn't fit like everybody else's does, but it's still you, and it's still your specific thing. So I think that's what made me just kind of back off, because I'm like, okay, I'm married now. I got the dude. I got the family. I got everything I wanted. The nose didn't stop a motherfucking thing. I'm still getting to be myself. So, you know, at this point, do I really need to invest that type of money in that? And is it a me thing? Like, can I adjust and just, you know, tweak my mindset a little bit? Or is it really important for me to go ahead and go through with this? For me, it wasn't. I'm not going to tell anybody else what to do with their body, but I will say that I'm kind of happy that I didn't go along with it. I feel like had I done it, I would have been removing lineage, removing DNA. Unfortunately, that would have been a disappointment to me, because now that I see things so differently as a middle-aged woman, you know, I have my father's nose. My father is a handsome man. He is very attractive, and I have his nose. And so to remove my nose would be to remove lineage that I came through him. That's DNA that I got from him, and that I handed down to my children. They all have full noses. So and not to mention that it even goes back further than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's African ancestry. Like, that's something that can, you know, be traced back to whatever tribe we came from, in our, you know, country that we have roots in. So I don't know, I just see things a little bit differently. Again, I'm not trying to tell anybody else what to do with their body. Each woman or each man has to make their own individual choice as to what they feel is best for them, and what their mind and their spirit and energy can handle or can't handle. But I like to represent for the undefined noses. You know, I got a full nose. It is what it is. Maybe it wasn't popularized back then. It wasn't the best nose to have back then. But now there's room for my nose to exist and still be beautiful and looked at as attractive. And there are many, many girls and boys who have this same type of nose structure, and they're just as beautiful, just as attractive. And, you know, I love to be able to be here and celebrate that with them. So that's my stories for today. The only thing that I will say real quick before I get off of here, the only thing that I am considering doing is getting a mole removal. I don't know if y'all can see all these moles, but baby, the older I get, they are just like coming everywhere. Mostly on my neck. I have a few like on my arm and some on my chest. I would like to get them removed. I don't care if they're flat to the face, but baby, when they start sticking up and sticking out and they're in 3D version, they got to go. I'm just, they're not gonna be sitting here waving at everybody. So that's the only thing that I am considering doing. Someone recommended a good place that could do that for me, so I'm gonna look into that. And if I do decide to do it, of course I will walk y'all through the steps of how it's done. But apparently when I did some research, it is hereditary, which I know because my mother has them, my grandmother has some, my auntie has them, my daughter is starting to get her first little speckles as a young lady. And so it is hereditary. Apparently you get more and more with age, so that affects me because, you know, I could be 60 and be covered in them. So my whole thing is, if I could take a few off each year so that there's not so many, I don't have to get rid of all of them, but some of them got to go. Okay, they just got to go. So that's the only thing that I'm considering at this point in my life. Everything else I'm keeping. I ain't never had no issues with my personal body shape because I've always liked the way my body looked. My nose was the only feature that I really wanted to change. And everything else I'm good with. So I'm good with my nose, I'm good with my body. I'm gonna get these moles removed at some point. I don't know when, but I'll let y'all know when I do. And that's all I got. So you guys leave in your comments what surgery, if you have or haven't already, what have you thought about either correcting, removing, changing, altering, and have you gone as far to do it, or did you just kind of like consider it and then decide that, you know, it was better for you not to do it? That's all I got for today. See you guys in the next video. Bye, y'all.